Our first speaker, Senator Jamie Eldridge, followed by Representative Mary Keefe, both co-chairs of the Criminal Justice Reform Caucus. I'll turn it over to you first, Senator Eldridge.
Great. Thank you so much, Dave. And I want to thank you and all the staff at Prisoners Legal Services for all of your advocacy. I'm speaking here as the Senate Chair of the Criminal Justice Reform Caucus, which I co-chair with Representative Mary Keefe. And I think it's important to give a little bit of background about the real concern that many members of the Criminal Justice Reform Caucus have about Governor Healey's $360 million proposed renovation of MCI-Framingham Prison, going back many years. The caucus was established in 2016, and around that period of time, Governor Baker had proposed a so-called new women's prison at a proposed cost of $50 million. The caucus expressed strong opposition to that and really led the effort to defeat that, recognizing that the prison population in general, including incarcerated women, was being reduced. And we were at a point in time where we were looking more at a more forward-thinking criminal justice reform system, supporting more programming, discussing reentry and how to better support those that are getting released from prison. And we're moving away from a decade's focus on building new prisons. And so that is partly why we're so alarmed by Governor Healey's proposal to spend $360 million on a new MCI-Framingham prison. At the end of the day, we have been in the prisons very frequently. We've sat down with incarcerated women, including just 2 weeks ago with incarcerated women at MCI-Framingham. And I think it's really important to keep in mind what actually exists at MCI-Framingham. While there are some buildings that are quite old, the reality is that most of the facilities that incarcerated women live in are fairly modern, built over the past several decades. And that means it's just as old as any of the men's prisons, none of which have a proposal for a substantial renovation right now. And so when you hear discussions or comments from administration about the need to make this a more modern facility, I think it's important to realize that the facilities have had some improvements already, that we feel that those conditions are satisfactory for incarcerated women. We recognize that there might need to be a focus on better programming, better space for vocational educational training. But the idea that that would take $360 million is very, very concerning. What the caucus instead is reformed on, and I appreciate the collaboration with the Healey-Driscoll administration, is focused on reentry, things like prison college education, vocational programs, coding, improving reentry support for those that are released. That is where money should be invested in, not in substantial capital improvements that, again, are not being asked for by the incarcerated women. And I noted that we met recently with about 10 incarcerated women at MCI-Framingham. Not only, sadly, did they not know much about this plan, but to a person, they opposed this plan, and their focus was, are there more opportunities for clemency? A significant number of the women are elderly. Is there a chance for medical parole? Can the women be placed in a minimum security facility or given ankle monitors so they can work, so they can have more freedom? These are all things that the governor currently has the power to do, but for the most part hasn't happened. And not only would these things cost less money, but they would be a more humanitarian environment and decisions by the administration and for the women. So what I really am hoping that the reporters and press at this press conference today think about is trying to get more answers about where the $360 million figure came from. Why exactly is this seen as necessary, given that the facility is actually a fairly modern facility? And therefore is not, this amount of money is not needed to make substantial improvements to MCI-Framingham to serve women that are there. And big picture, why aren't we looking at clemency, medical parole, minimum security facility? And I want to conclude and say is that it's important to remember that during the transition from Governor Baker to Governor Healey, then Governor Baker hired a consulting group, the Ripple Group, to look at this facility, and they actually recommended that this be a minimum security facility. And yet, as I understand it, this facility would continue to be a medium security prison. That means that incarcerated women wouldn't be able to participate in work release. They would have limited access to educational and college programs, which are already limited at MCI-Framingham. And it seems to me that even a consulting group that recommended going in a different direction, the administration has charged ahead with this substantial proposal. So as the Senate Chair of the Criminal Justice Reform Caucus, I want to express extreme concern over this. The caucus just recently met this week to discuss moving forward and asking for more information. But I know that many organizations, whether Prisoners Legal Services, whether Families for Justice and Healing, other organizations have asked for information from the Healey-Driscoll administration. And unfortunately, none of us have received the kind of information about where that number figure came from, how they see education and vocational programs actually changing if this facility were to be built. And where is this coming from at a time when, very proud to say, Massachusetts has been one of the leaders in criminal justice reform, alternatives, and moving away from lock them up and throw away the key. And just final comment is that remember that on the average day, there are just 200 women incarcerated at MCI-Framingham. So the idea that we would spend well over $1 million per incarcerated female really doesn't make financial sense. And I don't have to tell anyone here that we're in a very concerning fiscal picture right now in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Thanks so much, and appreciate PLS leading this press conference today.
Thank you so much, Senator, for your comments. I'll turn it over to Representative Keefe.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting us to be here. I'm Mary Keefe. I'm state representative for the 15th Worcester District. And this issue is very important overall to the people that I represent. Sorry. Everything that Jamie said is so right on. And for our end, what we're trying to do is pull our legislative allies together and really be strategic about a response to this proposal. So this is really helpful today. I want to thank everybody who's putting time and energy and work into this. I really am excited about a small meeting that we had yesterday that was the beginning of focusing on this as legislators and understanding. So lots of questions. This is a good step forward. And thank you, everybody, for what you contributed here.
Thank you so much, Rep. Keefe, and thank you both for being here. I want to introduce and turn it over now to Mallory, Hanora, and Angelia Jefferson from Families for Justice as Healing to take us through a little bit of the context and history of this project.
Thank you very much and good morning. Again, I'm Mallory Hanora. I'm the co-director of Families for Justice as Healing, and our mission is to end the incarceration of women and girls. Our members include women inside MCI-Framingham and women who have come home from Framingham. Directly impacted women discovered the state's plan to rebuild MCI-Framingham in 2019 after 200 women were moved from Framingham to South Bay. We raised concerns then that no plans for release or community-based alternatives were considered for pretrial and county sentenced women. Under the Baker administration, the state put out an RFP for a contract to study and design a women's correctional facility. This contract was awarded to HDR in 2021, and since then, HDR has already been paid millions of dollars by the state under various contracts to design the women's prison. I want to thank Senator Eldridge and Rep. Keefe, and I want to emphasize what Senator Eldridge said. Incarcerated and formerly incarcerated women have been clear and consistent that they do not support massive prison construction, including testifying to the legislator, meeting with legislators, and writing to Governor Healey herself. Governor Healey announced the $360 million women's prison complex on June 30th. Women inside MCI-Framingham were not engaged nor even notified before her press release celebrating the plan. In fact, we emailed the press release and mailed the press release into Framingham. Given the lack of information in the press release, we've repeatedly done records requests to track the project, and each time the records have come back almost entirely redacted. We're glad to share those responses with you if you'd like them. We still do not have answers to basic questions about the project, such as an explanation for the 7-fold cost increase, a proposed bed count, or the timeline. And while we've always agreed that some repairs are necessary, the administration has not been specific about any current structural issues at the prison or their plan to address those. From what we have been able to gather, the $360 million women's prison complex is supposed to include demolition that is actually slated to begin this year, massive renovations that, as the senator said, far exceed the scope of necessary repairs, as well as the construction of 2 brand new buildings. The administration plans to spend $360 million to downsize the prison, which is a massive increase from the $50 million price tag that was originally proposed. The current operational capacity of Framingham is 668, and the administration has made no commitment on how much they plan to reduce that. Nor have they done the necessary work to evaluate the current population at MCI-Framingham to assess who is currently eligible for release through existing legal pathways such as parole, medical parole, clemency, and classifying women to minimum and pre-release status to serve the remainder of their sentences in the community where they can make positive contributions and begin to rebuild their life. About 25% of women in MCI-Framingham are being held pre-trial, which means they haven't been convicted of anything. They're from Middlesex County, and we could massively decarcerate MCI-Framingham by allowing women to be free to fight their case. There are currently 30 women who are older than 55 years old in MCI-Framingham, including 6 women in their 70s, many of whom have debilitating health issues. We should not be spending $360 million to build a prison for them to die in. Instead, we could fully implement medical parole as the legislature intended, and pass elder parole to give these aging women an opportunity for consideration for release. All of these clear opportunities to further reduce the population through common sense policy must be pursued before prison construction planning, and that should include the jail and prison construction moratorium to pause this process. As I mentioned, the $360 million prison complex plan includes a proposal to build a new programming building, which from records request we could see is called a Community Wellness and Learning Center. For us, this is an outrageous co-optation of language, right? MCI-Framingham is a medium security prison. It is not a community center. So to suggest that prison is a place for wellness flies in the face of what incarcerated women actually experience, which is separation from their children and families, the daily indignities of strip searches and constant surveillance, the re-traumatizing and dehumanizing experience of being under the custody and control of the DOC. And for some women, that includes sexual harassment and abuse. The state also proposes to build a new medical building, which is being called or proposed to be called a care and treatment center. And while physical and mental health are 2 of the top concerns incarcerated women raise to me on an almost daily basis, building a new building won't change who is providing the care in the DOC nor the quality of that care, which is being provided by VitalCore, a massive private contractor. And they're currently being sued by one of their former doctors for forcing him to provide substandard care. We know treatment in incarceration settings is coercive and ineffective compared to community care, and incarcerating people who are using drugs actually increases their risk of overdose. Prisons are prisons. They are not treatment centers or hospitals or hospices. If we have $360 million available for women, we should spend that on supporting women to reenter the community and preventing incarceration in the first place by ensuring women and their families have access to what they need to thrive. In the governor's plan, it acknowledges that women inside MCI-Framingham are struggling with mental illness and poverty and addiction, and this cannot be our plan. A $360 million women's prison cannot be our plan for supporting women who are struggling with mental illness, poverty, and addiction. On top of all this, incarcerated women are rightfully worried about what 6 to 8 years of construction, how that will impact them, including noise, dirt and dust, potential toxins, potential for extensive lock-ins, limited yard access, and the health and environmental impacts, especially given the mismanagement of previous renovations. And we want to raise the question of why this is happening right now. Governor Healey has closed hospitals. We are in a housing crisis. And meanwhile, the Trump regime is slashing funding for essential services and safety nets, which will push even more families into poverty. Spending $360 million on a women's prison complex will only fuel cycles of criminalization, incarceration, and family separation. So we have to stop this project, shift our approach, and invest in women and community care and resources that allow women and our families to heal and advance our lives. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mallory. I'll turn it over to Angelia.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Angelia Jefferson. I served 31 years at MCI-Framingham. I am a mother, a daughter, sister, grandmother, and I am a friend. I oppose this trauma-informed prison that they are trying to build because I just feel like the $360 million can be used towards so many other different things other than building a care and treatment center. They had ITU, which is was supposed to be the mental health unit, and that just didn't work out good. The people that are in control of the treatment inside of the prison, those are the people that are harming all of us. They say care, custody, and control. It's not care, custody, and control. Only thing it is control, because they like to control our minds, our bodies, and our souls. They control when we eat, they control when we sleep, what we think, what we do, when we use the phone, when we shower, everything. They control everything there is about us, to the point where sometimes I used to feel like I was a robot under their control. Okay, Angie, you can't walk to the left. You have to walk to the right. So I have to walk to the right. If I don't walk to the right, I get locked up. I get thrown into a cell with nothing. I do not, for the life of me, understand why take this amount of money and invest it into these supposedly new trauma-informed places that they want to build. The trauma is still going to be there. The disrespect is still going to be there. The strip searches are still going to be there, which are very degrading. The treatment of the women inside of prison here just isn't good at all. Mental health treatment, if you go to someone and talk to them about your mental health, you can end up in a dry cell with a slab on the floor because you let them know how you were feeling. Or better yet, they'll take Suboxone and methadone and give it to you to calm your nerves, which they also use for pain management, which I really don't understand that part either. All this money that they have, they can take it and they can invest it into our communities for housing, for mental health, for medical care, to make things better. So when the women come out, they'll have something to look forward to. Housing is a big thing that women are going to need when they come home. Governor Healey made new guidelines for clemency. Please, I would love for her to use those guidelines for the women that are coming up for clemency positions. There's one that's in now. There's a few more coming up later on down the road. Use that, let the women out. The women can be free today, this day. The women can come home. The women can survive out here in the real world. Myself, knowing these women that are in there, knowing how they operate, knowing how they are, I know when they come home that they can be a productive member in society. I know that they can be. This money that they're taking to build this trauma-informed prison, as they call it, isn't going to make anything better. It's going to make things worse for all of us. These are mothers, these are daughters, these are friends, these are sisters, whatever the case may be. The treatment that they're experiencing inside of there right now is just not healthy at all. I remember when they changed the windows in the inside of the prison. They moved everyone down to the Smith building. The whole compound moved everyone down to the Smith building. They said we were going to be down there for 6 months. We ended up being down there for 3 years. And then on top of it, all the money that they spent to put these new windows in, they put them in upside down. So that prolonged the process that we had to be in the Smith building on top of each other, which wasn't right either. Then the women that had walkers, that had canes, that had wheelchairs, they had access to move around with the help of us that was helping them move back and forth to do everything that they had to do. So them saying that they don't have access, them saying that they need ramps, them saying that it will be better is a lie. It's not going to be better. My advice is just shut it down, let my sisters come home, and I will handle it from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelia. I'd like to introduce Sarah Nawab, my colleague at Prisoners Legal Services, and also the director of our Women's Project, to share some comments as well.
Thanks so much, Dave. Good morning. Thank you all for your time. My name is Sarah Nawab. I'm a staff attorney with Prisoners Legal Services of Massachusetts. I am also the director of PLS's Women's Incarceration Conditions and Reentry Project. Through my work at PLS, I keep in regular contact with women incarcerated at MCI-Framingham through phone calls, letters, and legal visits. My mandate is to provide legal assistance to these women to try to resolve the issues they face during incarceration. Through this work, I've found that incarcerated women's concerns have little to do with the physical plant of MCI-Framingham and are rather a result of deeply rooted cultural issues. For example, women at MCI-Framingham regularly report harassment from staff, including body shaming, use of misogynistic language, and sexual harassment. Women who try to use the prison's internal grievance process to document these issues report facing retaliation. This retaliation has resulted in fear among incarcerated women when it comes to making complaints about problem officers or harmful staff behavior. This culture of harassment and retaliation is endemic to the prison system and is not an issue that we can build our way out of. Women at MCI-Framingham also report a lack of access to meaningful programming. For example, unlike incarcerated men in medium security, women at MCI-Framingham are not allowed to form and meet in self-help groups. They also only have access to a certificate program with no means of obtaining a college degree at this time. Providing meaningful education, programming, and permission to form self-help groups is something MCI-Framingham and the Department of Correction could do right now, and it would not require an expensive new complex. Women also report how difficult it is to obtain medical parole. Since the passage of the medical parole law as part of the Criminal Justice Reform Act of 2018, PLS has filed 12 medical parole petitions on behalf of 8 women at MCI-Framingham, and only 1 of our petitions has been granted. This is why PLS, following the lead of our partners at Families for Justice's Healing, is supporting a bill that would clarify and expand the medical parole process and also create a process for elder parole so we can safely release many of the oldest and longest serving women in the Commonwealth. This bill and other reforms like it are what the Commonwealth should be focusing on to promote public safety. Since the passage of the CJRA, the Commonwealth has made incredible strides to reduce incarceration rates, especially for women. A $360 million women's prison complex will take us backwards and undo our progress. Women incarcerated at MCI-Framingham have also been clear that they do not want this complex. Rather, they want quality programming, reentry support, and meaningful pathways to release. PLS's mandate is to support the needs of incarcerated people, so we, like our clients, oppose this project. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Sarah. Now I'll invite Nithya Badranath of Jane Doe, Inc. to come up.
Thank you, Dave. Hi, everyone. My name is Nithya Badranath, and I'm the Policy Director at Jane Doe, Inc., the Massachusetts Coalition Against Sexual Assault and Domestic Violence. We work with and represent 60 direct service sexual and domestic violence programs across the state. I just want to start off by emphasizing everything that every speaker before me has said. So the construction of a new women's prison will directly harm survivors of sexual and domestic violence. Most women in prisons are survivors themselves, with statistics reporting up to 90% of women who are incarcerated have experienced sexual and intimate partner violence. Incarceration then compounds trauma because prisons are sites of violence. The majority of women in MCI-Framingham have reported experiencing or witnessing sexual harassment or violence in custody. From a report from Sarah and Prisoners Legal Services, there were accounts included misogynistic language, verbal and physical abuse during strip searches, and correctional officers exploiting their authority to comment on and control their bodies. These power dynamics replicate the patterns of coercion and control found in abusive relationships. We firmly believe a trauma-informed prison is still a prison. No renovations or building upgrades will ever erase the culture that prisons create. It cannot substitute for true healing and support. The core functions of prisons are rooted in control and punishment, and the tenets of trauma-informed care include autonomy, trust, collaboration, and healing. These concepts are in direct conflict with each other, as prisons are inherently re-traumatizing and continue cycles of violence. This significant investment also comes in a time of literal crisis. Our programs are reeling from threats and actual cuts to essential programming. In our state budget this year, domestic and sexual violence programs funded through the Department of Public Health received a $7 million cut. The state also did not include allocations for essential victim services to fill gaps for Federal Victims of Crime Act funding. On the federal level, programs that provide housing, healthcare, food assistance, and legal support are facing similar threats. The women currently incarcerated at MCI-Framingham do need investment, but they need it in their communities where they should return and where support systems can help break cycles of violence. As all the speakers before me have shared, there are clear paths to dramatically decrease costs associated with incarcerating the small population of women through supporting clemency, expanding medical and elder parole opportunities, investing in community-based reentry and support services, and addressing the root causes of violence. JDI, our programs, and so many advocacy and community organizations are doing violence prevention work. The administration must reshift their priorities, invest in our communities, and never incarceration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nithya. Next, I'm happy to introduce Jasmine Borges, Director of Organizing for the Mass Bail Fund and formerly incarcerated person herself, to share some thoughts as well. Thank you, Jasmine.
Thank you, Dave. Just wanted to say thank you for PLS for inviting me to this important conversation today. Again, my name is Jasmine Borges. I'm the Director of Organizing for the Massachusetts Bail Fund. The Bail Fund is a nonprofit abolitionist organization that helps pay cash bail for our community members that can't afford to do so. And specifically, we do post bail for women at MCI-Framingham. I served 12 years at MCI-Framingham, and I'm here today standing in solidarity with my sisters still behind the wall and with over 70 formerly incarcerated women who joined me this month in signing a letter demanding that the Healey administration not invest $360 million into a women's complex. Instead of wasting taxpayer money on the continuation of harm and violence against women, we demand that the Healey administration use liberatory mechanisms that already exist, that have already been mentioned, that include clemency, commutations, elder parole, medical parole, regular parole, and the proper use of the classification system so that women in Framingham can step down to minimum security and pre-release programs. In my 12 years at Framingham, I witnessed women lose the fight to suicide, lose the fight to drug addiction, and endure brutal violence at the hands of correctional officers. My personal friend, Brittany, was beaten so badly she was left with a broken nose, 2 black eyes, and 2 broken ribs, and then was sent to solitary confinement. There was no public outrage, no protest. This was business as usual. I know these are extreme examples, but the day-to-day was and continues to be just as bad. Constant racism, sexism, body shaming, sexual harassment, the abuse and violence against us women behind those walls was and is relentless, far beyond what the public ever sees or acknowledges. And through it all, no one came to save us because we were state property. But we survived, and our sisters on the inside continue to survive by holding on to hope that freedom will come. Framingham and its counterparts across the Commonwealth were built on the intertwined ideologies of white supremacy, patriarchy, and classism. These systems were never designed to heal, serve, nor resource our people. They were built to subjugate, oppress, control, and inflict violent harm. I want to say this next part with absolute clarity. Framingham cannot be reimagined. Prisons and jails cannot be reimagined, cannot be trauma-informed, cannot be housing, are not places of treatment, and cannot be made pretty. If the Healey administration is truly interested in reimagining the quality of life for our sisters on the inside and building real safety in our communities, then they must realize it will never come from creating more prisons, more jails, or punitive policies. Reimagining begins ending all ties to carceral expansions and begins with investing $360 million into affordable, excuse me, low threshold housing, access to healthcare, strong reentry services, access to higher education, meaningful employment, non-coercive treatment for people struggling with substance use and mental health issues, and affordable childcare for our single mothers. I'll end by saying this: true safety is achieved when our people are resourced to thrive in communities that understand them. And $360 million is a good way to start resourcing our people today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. And our last speaker for this morning before we close with some specific asks and information is Dr. Christine Mitchell from Health in Partnership.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you to all the powerful speakers before me. My name is Dr. Christine Mitchell. I'm the Health Instead of Punishment Program Director at Health in Partnership, which is a national public health nonprofit. As a highly trained public health researcher, I'm here to refute the claim that Governor Healey's $360 million prison reconstruction plan is evidence-based. To the contrary, research is clear that prisons cannot ever be trauma-informed. Prisons are inherently places of profound structural violence premised on surveillance, seclusion, and punitive control. The experience of incarceration is correlated with a multiplicity of adverse health outcomes, including higher rates than the general population of early mortality, hypertension, asthma, arthritis, cervical cancer, anxiety, depression, infectious disease, and so much more. No amount of reconstruction can mitigate those harms. Even prisons that are lauded as more humane, such as those in Norway, do not circumvent the physical and mental health violence inherent to imprisonment. For example, research on prisons in Norway finds that concerns remain regarding poorer health-related outcomes, including higher suicide rates and high levels of dissatisfaction with health services within the prisons. Those same problems, as we've heard here today, exist here in Massachusetts. We know that our communities are in dire need of quality healthcare and behavioral health treatment, and that too few have access to these resources. Incarceration is not the solution to this problem, and to suggest that it is ignores the health harms of carceral settings and the medical neglect that occurs behind prison walls. Not only do prisons and jails so often fail to provide the treatment people need, but they inherently cannot. Carceral facilities, by virtue of their punitive nature, cannot uphold patient rights requirements for care settings, like the ability to assert choice in treatment without fear of retaliation. In a system of custody and control, true privacy, dignity, and recovery are simply not possible, regardless of the structure of the building itself. Those $360 million in taxpayer dollars should instead be invested in the things our communities and the women inside MCI-Framingham actually need. This is basic public health. In 2021, the American Public Health Association, which is the largest professional organization of public health professionals in the US, highlighted the harms of carceral systems and urged all levels of government to reallocate funding from the construction of jails, detention centers, and prisons to the social determinants of health, including things like affordable, quality, and accessible housing, healthcare, employment, education, including in early childhood, and transportation. Research shows that access to these resources, not more carceral infrastructure, is what people need to thrive safely and healthily in their communities. This is what an investment in people, a commitment to second chances, and a responsibility to build a safer future for communities statewide, which is what Governor Healey claims this plan will do, truly looks like. And so I, along with over 200 public health professionals in Massachusetts and across the country who signed on to a public health letter in opposition to this reconstruction plan, urge Governor Healey to follow public health evidence. Stop the misguided redevelopment plan of MCI-Framingham. maximize decarceration efforts, and invest in the social determinants of health for our communities instead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mitchell. Thank you to all of the speakers who were able to share their powerful stories and their thoughts today. And I just want to remind all of our guests that after the conference this morning, we'll be putting together a follow-up packet with a number of the documents that we've referenced during our conversation this morning. So we'll get to questions in just one moment, but a few quick notes first before we get there. The first is that despite the administration's attempts to maybe do so, this project doesn't have the public support yet that they might claim it does. You heard just today about 3 different sign-on letters that had a number of different signatories, including the Prisoners Legal Services sign-on letter, which included 80 signatories of different civil rights and advocacy organizations in opposition to the program, the formerly incarcerated women's letter with over 70 signatories, and the public health letter that Dr. Mitchell just mentioned with over 200 signatories. There is pushback to this project from a number of different locations and sectors. It's not limited to just one group of people. Additionally, many members of the Framingham legislative delegation, including the Senate president herself, along with a number of Framingham local officials, including the mayor and city council, were not made aware of the project's announcement before the administration sent out their press release. That doesn't indicate particularly strong planning or stakeholder engagement on the part of the administration. Lastly, a number of the administration's stated goals for elements of the project can be remediated now with little or no major capital investment, as you've heard today, things like programming and culture change. A number of the programs that women at Framingham are calling for did previously exist in the facility, especially prior to COVID, and had been removed with no explanation as to why they've never returned. Those clearly did not require a $360 million facility to operate prior to 2020. It's unclear why they would need that to operate now. So the organizations here, along with a number of our colleagues and allies, have formally asked the administration for a number of specific things. The first is a formal pause on this project to consider other options for effective public safety. You've heard those calls today: housing, support, other mental health and medical support treatment options. The second is for transparency from the administration about what the scope of this project actually includes, the current status of it, the funding involved and its source, the firms involved and the stakeholders who are consulted, have been consulted, and what the process will be for consulting further stakeholders down the road. It's been particularly difficult to get information from the administration about what this project will actually include. So we're demanding more of that accountability and transparency from the administration. Third, we're requesting an exploration of real decarceration efforts for the women who are still there. You've heard a number of those different components this morning, but they include for the women who are eligible for clemency under the governor's new guidelines to explore those, exploring medical parole, normal parole, and any other options that would allow folks currently in that facility to come home, be moved to lower security facilities, to come back to their communities. The count at Framingham is already quite low. And if we're in a space where of the 200 and roughly 20 women or 218 women who are there, 30, 40, or 50 of them are in a space to come home right now, with more able to come home very soon, then the administration's efforts to spend this amount of money on the facility seem even more misaligned with the needs of the Commonwealth than they do now. Fourth, we're asking for the administration to really truly investigate the cultural and management issues in the facility. That includes holding DOC to task for the failures to manage violence, harassment, and violations of privacy against the women at Framingham, as well as other management and cultural issues there. And then lastly, for the legislature to support the prison moratorium bill. We have communicated these requests to the administration in a variety of those sign-on letters, as well as through emails and other communications with the governor and the lieutenant governor. So far, we have not heard much in the way of response. There have been a few meetings, but not much. So hopefully a number of you will be able to do some sleuthing and find out more information about the program and what exactly this proposal includes and what the administration's objectives are in doing so. We're going to open it now for questions for a few moments. If folks have any questions, you can certainly feel free to toss them in the chat or ask them out loud. We'll do our best to triage those to the appropriate experts here. I'll give it a few moments. If there are no questions, then we'll wrap the session for this morning and follow up with that packet, as we mentioned before. But we'll open it now for a few moments for questions for anyone who may have particular items they'd like to follow up on.
I had a quick question. Can you guys hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Great. This is Hadley Barndollar from Mass Live. I wanted to ask if the women at MCI-Framingham have expressed any interest in particular structural changes in terms of the quality of the facility.
So Hadley, just to double check, are you asking about physical plant structural issues that the women may have asked for?
Correct.
Got it. I might turn this over to Angelia and Mallory, maybe our most appropriate folks here.
The women, they're not asking for anything new. Is that what she's talking? I'm trying to understand her question. They're not asking for anything new. They're asking to be released. They're asking for the prison they're asking for the $360 million construction not to take place.
Yeah.
They're more, sorry, Jasmine, they're
Yeah,
concerned.
Yep, go
Go
ahead.
ahead, honey.
Oh, no, go ahead. No.
No, they're concerned with like their health. They're concerned with, are they going to be moved somewhere else where their family doesn't know? They're concerned about their kids. They're concerned about their education. They're concerned about coming home. Those are the things that are on their mind. Go ahead, Jasmine.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that over 20 women back in 2023 testified in front of the legislative session for the prison moratorium. Angelia was one of them who testified in support of the prison moratorium and clearly stated that what they wanted was more programming, access to freedom, access to their families and loved ones, access to better health care. Yeah, they're not concerned about building a new treatment wellness center, if that's what it's being called.
And
Good morning.
Mal, I
just wanted to add, not only is there a history of women opposing this project, I communicate with women, and Angie and I communicate with women really on a really regular basis. And in full transparency, women have not contacted me over 5 years of being in direct communication with structural concerns. That's not what they're raising with me about what they need like our support with. And then even when I mailed in and core linked in large portions of the governor's press release to say, hey, we just want you to know this is what the governor has announced. We know you weren't included in this process. Women were writing back to me with their concerns about that, but had also urgent issues. And those urgent issues were, I've been classed already to minimum and they're refusing to transfer me, or I'm preparing for parole and I need support with finding a place to go in the community, and issues about being due for release and not being released yet. So no, women have not raised particular structural issues, and with one exception of repaving the sidewalk. And those are, a totally different scale of repairs than a $360 million women's prison. And temperature control has been a major issue over the years with the Department of Correction. A significant amount of Framingham does have air conditioning, and there are air conditioned units and places available for women. So it's really about managing the space so that women are in temperature controlled environments. And again, correcting that issue is not proportional with $360 million of construction. So the last thing I'd point you to as well is that in addition to the formerly incarcerated women's letter, which was just delivered to the governor on Tuesday, I think almost 2 years ago now, incarcerated women wrote directly to the Healey administration with their pressing concerns, and those did not include the structural issues. So we can make sure you have that letter as well, and those issues have gone unaddressed. So it was it's difficult for women inside to obviously express themselves. It was a major deal when they sent a communication to the governor. It was signed by 50 women inside. So again, those issues have not been addressed yet. And before any prison construction planning happens, we think that the governor should start with those. We'll make sure you can get a copy of that letter.
Thank you, everyone. We have a question in the chat. And we can either throw that out loud, or I can try to mention it, but about programming that used to be available in the facility prior to COVID, and that disappeared during COVID and never came back. Again, I may rely on Jasmine and Angelia to be our experts there. Do we have a sense of what some of those programs looked like and what they used to be prior to COVID that wasn't or isn't available now?
You want to go, Ange? Okay. Well, you chime in because I've been home a little bit longer. But some of the programming that existed way before COVID was we used to have Girl Scouts programming where our daughters would be signed up for a Girl Scout troop and they would come in and we do Girl Scout activities. We used to have barbecues and there was like a trailer where you would be able to see your child and spend the weekend with them. We had restorative justice there. BU, Boston University was a degree program. Me and Angie both graduated from BU, but that is no longer a degree program, right? It is a certificate now. So higher education is non-existent at MCI-Framingham. There were a slew of mental health classes, robust volunteer people that used to come in and do spirituality. There used to be Phoenix Rising, which was a group of women telling their stories to community members coming in from the outside. Yeah, there was just so many things that were actually helpful to occupy your time and heal your mind. And that's not happening now.
There was also AANA, AANA. Yes, they had AANA groups. And like she said, the different spirituality groups that they had parenting groups, they had self-esteem groups, they had eating, like if you had an eating disorder, they had groups for that. They had healthcare groups, you name it. The groups were like, they had so many different variety of groups, but then they just took them all away from us, like at the snap of a finger. And it's like, wait a minute, I was signed up for that. Yeah, but you're not anymore. Now we're going to incorporate pathways, which, like I said, is a friggin' joke because you sit in there and you sit there for an hour, and once you leave the group after the hour is done, you haven't learned anything. So that's what they put in place of all the groups that were helping myself and my other sisters.
And a very quick follow-up to both of you, Angelia and Jasmine. My memory was that Framingham did used to have a limited industries program in some textile work. There was something about working on furniture, reupholstering furniture, and making flags, ironically making American flags.
They
That when I
still
toured
have,
the facility back in 2014 or 15, those facilities were up and running.
they still have industries. Industries
Okay.
is still up and running. They're still making the flags. The wood shop has been closed for a while now. They took that away in the early 2000s, I want to say. They took that away, right, Jasmine?
Yeah, building trades.
Building trades, yes. They took that away. But now they have another program there for young women, emerging adults, I think that's what they call it. But from what I hear, the program sucks. It has nothing that the women that are involved in it like. Actually, a few women have left the program because they said it just doesn't do anything for them. They have a couch. You could lay on the couch, you could watch movies, they get pizza, you could use the phone, but like they said, they would rather be doing other things with themselves than just laying around in this unit all day.
Thank you both. We probably have time and space for maybe one more question today. And then again, please feel free to follow up with our team. We'll make sure that our contact information is available on that follow-up document for additional questions. But one thing I'll briefly highlight that I think both of these questions have helped bring up is there's a disconnect between the things the administration is saying and the realities of the experience of the women at Framingham and of sort of the needs for public safety. A lot of the administration's press materials on this project have cited the absolutely deplorable conditions at Framingham, but have failed to mention that some of the facilities there are about the same age and in the same state of repair as most of the men's facilities are, as Senator Eldridge noted. So there's not a lot of clarity in exactly what physical plant challenges the administration has determined are so essential to address that they require this level of investment. The same is true for programming. A lot of the administration's stated goals are to increase and advance programming, but there was, as you just heard from Angelia and Jasmine, more programming available in the same space we have now that doesn't require a substantially revamped and vastly more expensive physical plant. BU's program requires a classroom, and we have classrooms at Framingham. It doesn't require some sort of chrome and marble classroom. It requires a space. And so it's a little unclear to what extent those things in the administration's proposal really require the level of investment that they're saying, when that level of investment could be much better spent on true public safety support, mental health, medical, and things like that for folks. So with that, one last question, if anyone has one.
I had one more quick follow-up. I was wondering if anyone had maybe gathered that perhaps this is being requested by DOC staff members. You know, is it perhaps correctional officers who want improved working conditions? Is there any indication that this is coming from inside of the DOC, you know, being requested of the administration?
I mean, I'll respond briefly with what PLS has heard, and then obviously I'll invite anyone else to answer. We don't have any concrete information from anyone or from the administration that this has been any kind of formal request from the Department of Correction or from the officers union or something along those lines. There may be conversations behind the scene that we're not privy to between those officials and the administration, and that some amount of this project is to support or you know, placate the union or the DOC more broadly. But if that's the case, none of that has been made public, and we haven't heard any of that so far. Again, if it is, it would seem strange to not mention that there is some support for better working conditions for state employees. That doesn't seem like an outrageously contentious concept to bring up, but we haven't heard anything along those lines so far in numerous emails and a few meetings with, again, the administration on this issue so far. That hasn't come up as a major concern from anyone. I'll invite anyone else to speak who may have more information about that PLS in particular hasn't heard. It looks like we're probably in a similar space to most of our colleague agencies here. Okay, well, we're just about at noon, and I'll try to keep everyone's time respected. So thank you all so much for coming. Again, the follow-up will be coming up probably later today or tomorrow with an email that has the press release, the recording of this press conference, and a number of the documents that we've mentioned. Thank you all so much for your time, and I really do encourage anyone of our guests here, please do get in touch with us for more information or detail. We have a number, especially Families for Justice is Healing has a huge amount of material that they've received in terms of public records requests over the course of years. We can make that available to folks if that would be valuable for any of your investigations or stories. So thank you all for your time. Thank you for listening, and hopefully we'll be in touch soon. Thank you all.